Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. If you're watching this concurrently with the Redemption Church, let me apologize for the huge gap. I was on mission, working with some really amazing, mostly underground churches, basically in the Middle East, and it was really amazing. It was really cool. Hopefully I was an encouragement to them. We got to share the gospel. We saw like 21 people give their lives to Christ, which in a 99% Muslim country is a huge deal. Like God was moving really mightily. I was blown away. It was so incredible to be a part of churches that are underground, one of which is like literally physically underground. I won't disclose any of their details or even what country they're in. But they're not only are they underground in that the government doesn't know about them and they keep it on the down low, but they're literally physically, they meet under the ground. It was really, really incredible. Well, the day that I got back from that trip, something called a bomb cyclone hit the Seattle area, and it particularly punched my mountain in the mouth. Okay, I live on Tiger Mountain in a neighborhood called Miramont, right at the edge of the Tiger Mountain State Forest, and the winds that came to fill the vacuum of that huge drop in air pressure, hence the term bomb cyclone, all came rushing over my mountain. And so I've been without power. I've been without internet. In fact, even at my time of recording, I currently don't have internet. I'm just recording this in faith that this little hotspot my church team gave me is going to be able to upload this content. So I want to apologize for the huge delay. Promise we're doing the absolute best we can to catch up. Thank you, AMC, for still having power, even while a lot of places don't. But we're going to continue through the Word of God. I want to show you something that may seem familiar. Okay, we're going to look at this from Matthew 24. Yeah, but Jesse, you've already taught the Gospel of Matthew. All right, stand by. I'm going to refer to something that I had told you we would come back to later. The abomination of desolation. I'm going to show you again the Son of Man. Okay, these are all things that draw upon Daniel, and then we'll show you where they come from in Daniel, and then we're going to get a glimpse at the final chapter of Daniel so that it's on our radar now that we're currently at the beginning of Daniel. Okay, so here's Matthew 24. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Okay, that parenthetical is from Matthew, who's writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And then the quote continues of Jesus, who is one with the Spirit. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. So this bold text, that's not my emphasis. The Christian Standard Bible does that anytime the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, which, by the way, again, is always the Septuagint. The abomination of desolation is in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. This interjection fascinates me. Let the reader understand. Because most people are like, I don't understand. Well, the abomination of desolation is bad news. It indicates this great tribulation, the onset of something really terrible that's going to happen. We've got this sort of shaky treaty between Israel and the Antichrist, as he's known colloquially, and biblically speaking, in Revelation, he's the beast. Well, that quickly gives way to all-out war. All right, Daniel 11, his forces will rise up and desecrate the temple fortress. They will abolish the regular sacrifice and set up the abomination of desolation. We saw the abomination of desolation named here. And we see this in the final chapter of Daniel, from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So this is the final chapter of Daniel. This is the penultimate chapter of Daniel. And both refer to this abomination of desolation. That 1,290 thing seems odd. Right, there's another number that comes like right after this too, 1,335. If you're a student of the Bible, you're thinking 1,260. Now, bear with me if you're brand new to all this. 1,260 days is 3.5 years. And we've been through kind of a shift in our calendar. We used to think that there were 360 days in a year. That used to be how we counted days in the year. And believe it or not, even like the Babylonians have something to do with why we count time the way that we do. I think that there's a reason why we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. The Babylonians had some stuff right. Well, both ancient Jews and ancient Babylonians counted 360 days in a year. And so 1,260 days is 3.5 years. The 3.5 years thing is significant because that's the second half of the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation is a total of 7 years. And so when we see 3.5 plus 3.5, what do we get? Well, we get 7. So the first 3.5 years are like vanilla flavored tribulation. Second 3.5 years, that's the Great Tribulation. And this is ushered in by the cessation of sacrifices in the temple. But there's something else you need to know. That doesn't add up to 1,290. There's an extra 30 days packed in here. All right, between from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. All right, 2 more things that are going to sound confusing, and then I promise, like as we introduce all this stuff, it'll start to make sense as we go through Daniel. The 3.5 years thing, the 1,260 days thing, is most commonly presented as a time, times, and half a time. Okay, a time, think 1 year. Times, think 2 years. And half a time, think half a year. 1 plus 2 plus 0.5. 3.5 years, 1,260 days. That adds up to a total of like 3.5 years, which is the full duration of the Great Tribulation. So when you see time, times, and half a time, think 1,260, which we can kind of see an allusion to, but there's an extra bonus 30 days right here in the Daniel 12 prophecy. And when you see abomination of desolation, we see that mentioned in Daniel 11, Daniel 12, and it's also spoken of by Jesus in Matthew 24. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. And then we're going to read what comes next. But first, I just want to try to establish this. A time, times, and half a time, that's 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. That's the full length of the Great Tribulation. When you see the abomination of desolation, that's foretold by Daniel and referred to in Jesus. But there's just one more piece to the puzzle. Okay, just think of it like I'm laying out tools for your toolbox. They're going to help you interpret Daniel as we move forward. I know that it's confusing. Just bear with me. There was this Ptolemaic ruler who was absolutely like bat excrement crazy. He referred to himself as Epiphanes, meaning the illustrious one. But Jewish people called him Epimanes, which means the madman. Antiochus the fourth. There was this like arranged marriage that's even going to show up in the prophecies of Daniel, in which was it Antiochus II was to be married to the daughter of one of the Seleucids, Theos. What was her name? Beatrice? Forgive my speculation. I was trying to remember the exact names. We'll get to that later on in Daniel. But this arranged marriage didn't go well when that man was already married and his wife went on a killing spree, and then she set her own son up to be king instead. And this kind of plowed the path for Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, to eventually take the throne. And this guy went absolutely berserk. And he tried to outlaw Jewish worship. He made even just possession of the reading of the Torah to be a capital offense. He sacrificed a pig on the altar. Now, to New Testament Christians, that sounds like a pig roast. At the Redemption Church, I think even like behind this camera, there's a sign for our pig roasts because we do pig roasts all the time. But to Old Testament Jews, that was an abomination. See? But it got worse. He would even set up a pagan idol in the Holy of Holies. It's not clear exactly what that was, but Antiochus Epiphanes IV likely set up a statue of Zeus in the Holy of Holies, the center of the center of the center of was supposed to be the middle of Jewish worship. This was an abomination of desolation. Antiochus Epiphanes IV, then, is this foreshadowing for the Antichrist. When we see the abomination of desolation in Daniel, we can see a duality to the nature of these prophecies. Okay, we know that he's foretelling what's to happen at the temple, right? They will abolish the regular sacrifice and set up the abomination of desolation. That comes true through Antiochus Epiphanes IV, but it's also going to come true in the last days as there are these commemorative sacrifices that come to a close. And then in Daniel chapter 12, from the time of the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So it allows for the 3.5 years to go by, plus there's an extra 30 days, I believe, to allow for the judgments of God. Okay, but I won't delve into that further. I just wanted to lay out some tools for your toolbox so that these aren't new to you when they arrive. You're going to see themes of a time, times, and half a time come up. Think 1,260 days. This one has an extra 30 in it. The abomination of desolation refers to both, I believe, Antiochus Epiphanes IV, desecrating of the temple, and then also the Antichrist or the beast declaring himself to be God in the temple. All right, here's why I believe that. I think it's going to usher in a time of historic suffering that's even worse than the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, 1/3 of the Jewish race was annihilated. And then if this prophecy, if my interpretation, my humble interpretation, which you can take or leave, we can still stand shoulder to shoulder with the gospel of Jesus Christ and disagree on this. And it's one of those things that I hope I'm wrong on. It's going to lead to probably twice that for the Jewish race in the end times. When you see the word elect, oftentimes in the New Testament, it's referring to saved Jews. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, okay, Jesus is telling us, when you see that happen, standing in the holy place, all right, I'm interpreting this to mean, because this is long after the days of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He has taken Daniel's prophecy of the abomination of desolation, and he has given a future prophecy with it. So what Antiochus Epiphanes IV did was a typification of what is to come. Let the reader understand. That's my humble understanding. Okay, be Bereans like Acts 17 and read the scriptures for yourselves. This is my humble interpretation. I believe that Jesus has taken what Daniel prophesied in Daniel 11 and Daniel 12, which was typified by Antiochus Epiphanes IV, setting up possibly a statue of Zeus in the Holy of Holies. And he has used it to foreshadow what the beast will do in the very last days, declaring himself to be God in the holy place. That's my understanding. That is what I use to interpret this right here, this parenthetical, let the reader understand. It wasn't just Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Antiochus Epiphanes IV was just a preview for the main event. And the main event is what we call the Antichrist, standing in the temple, declaring himself to be God, accompanied by signs and wonders that will even deceive Christians, even deceive some of the saved Jews in the tribulation. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. Get out of town. Get out of there. A man on the housetop must not come down to get things out of his house. Like don't even get a backpack. And a man in the field must not go back to get his coat. Go without the jacket. Woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days, because things are about to get unimaginably bad. Pray that your escape may not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. All right, you can see that the Sabbath reinstituted in the last days. It's pretty fascinating. We'll talk more about that later. For at that time, there will be great distress, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now and never will again. So I believe it's going to be worse than the Holocaust. Unless those days were cut short, no one would be saved. But those days will be cut short because of the elect. Okay, God always shows mercy for the sake of the remnant. If anyone tells you, see, here's the Messiah, or over here, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. In this darkly imitation of the ministry of Jesus, the beast will have his own forerunner, just as Jesus had John the Baptist in a darkly demonic fashion. The Antichrist, as we call him, will have his own hype man. And it'll be accompanied by this miraculous sign that There have been fictitious works that have sort of fabricated some embellished some details and sort of filled in some blanks describing. I think Zechariah is the only thing that actually gives us a physical description of the Antichrist. It seems to indicate that he'll have like some sort of fatal head wound from which he survives. That's why I think in the Left Behind series, their character who plays the part of the Antichrist gets shot and then seems to resurrect from the dead. That's speculative, but I get where they're coming from. They're drawing upon the physical description of the Antichrist in Zechariah. What we do see straight from the mouth of Jesus is that there are going to be miraculous signs, great signs and wonders that will lead astray even the elect. Okay, so watch out. If your whole basis for your faith is signs and wonders, you're going to have no shortage of signs and wonders in the last days, even in the Great Tribulation. And it's going to lead a lot of people astray, even the elect, even those from the Jewish faith who at first seemed to receive the message of Jesus because of all of these prophetic signs being fulfilled around them. When the abomination of desolation takes place, they look at this guy standing there in the holy place declaring himself to be God, and they think, you know what? He's performed all these signs. He's performed all these great wonders. I think he might be legit. And so it's going to lead even saved people astray. Take note. I have told you in advance, even those, at least those who profess Christ, not necessarily saved people, those who profess Christ can be led astray. So if they tell you, see, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. Or see, he's in the storerooms, don't believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, this again is another title given to the Messiah by Daniel. This is why I wanted to come from Matthew 24 and kind of show you this stuff that reminds you of this stuff. You've been with us for our whole study. Wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. Okay, like you see these signs popping up, and then people are going to swoop in on it. Think Herald Camping and the desire to put out a date for when the return of Christ would come. This has happened before. Jesus warns about it. There are going to be false prophets. There are going to be false messiahs. Look, the Messiah is here. Look, the Messiah is there. And Jesus says, like, don't believe any of it. There are even going to be people, there's even going to be miraculous signs and wonders that can deceive professing believers. And it's the ushering in a time of incredible suffering. This, by the way, would also fit with one of the interpretations we put forth at the end of the book of Ezekiel regarding this Gog and Magog thing, like a second Holocaust, another persecution of Israel. There were a few interpretations of Gog and Magog that we laid out at the end of our study of Ezekiel, and one of them was that like there's only one battle of Gog and Magog. The other one is that like there's this first battle of Gog and Magog, and then there's this second battle of Gog and Magog. One interpretation is that there is this massive suffering that's brought upon Israel again in the last days, and then if that's true, it would be kind of like a second Holocaust, but even worse. You know, if that's what Matthew 24 is talking about. And so then to give rise to this series of judgments, then you can see the reason for this extra 30 days that's described in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. So I know that this stuff is all very confusing. I wanted to put this on your radar now. We're going to talk more about it as we move through it. And Daniel chapter 12 will make more sense when we get to Daniel 12. Daniel 11 will make more sense when we get to Daniel 11. But I wanted to put it on your radar now so that as we approach it, you'll understand. There's this thing called the abomination of desolation. It's foretold in Daniel. Antiochus Epiphanes IV sort of reenacted all that stuff ahead of time, but Jesus drew upon the abomination of desolation in Matthew 24 to give a warning about the great tribulation to come one day. When you see those words, a time, times, and half a time, think 3.5 years. That's going to come up a lot, especially in Daniel chapter 12, and then it's also going to come up a lot in our study of Revelation. So forgive me if I've just confused you even more. What I wanted to show you is that in our study of Matthew chapter 24, we saw Jesus draw upon Daniel, the abomination of desolation, and the Son of Man title. We've already seen some of this Daniel content. Jesus believes the book of Daniel. I believe the book of Daniel. I pray that you likewise would believe the book of Daniel. Keep these tools in your toolbox and keep them right there handy as we delve into the book of Daniel. We're going to go verse by verse through it. And if this stuff still confuses you, what I've heard suggested is start a journal for those things that confuse you. Keep this journal a complete secret. Because if you think to yourself that somebody else someday is going to read this thing, then you're going to change what you write. You're not going to be totally honest. So it could be a physical book, or it could be like an encrypted doc on your drive. Whatever you choose to do, be 100% honest with this thing and state what confuses you. I don't really get the abomination of desolation. I don't really know why there are 1,290 days and then 1,335 days and then 1,260 days. Like, I don't really know what times and half a time means. You know, like whatever those check boxes that you need to fully grasp the message of Daniel, lay those out in a private journal or a private document. Go back through as we study Daniel and then provide your own answers to your own questions. This private journal, as private as it is, it'll be a blessing to you. The more private, the more meaningful, because you're not trying to impress anybody. You're not trying to create some false record of understanding. You're not trying to knowledge signal. You're just being honest with your own self about what you don't understand in these prophecies. So keep these things on your dashboard as we go through the book of Daniel. We're at the very beginning right now. We're going to get to the final chapter. I just showed you something that's in the last chapter and reminded you of something we've already seen in Matthew 24. When I talk about the abomination of desolation, that's something that Daniel prophesied and that Jesus used to foretell of the last days.